Welcome to CultureBanx Game Changers. We're bringing the most interesting companies and the bosses behind them who are changing the game. I'm Dan Roberts.
Yeah, and I'm Corey Howell. Welcome back to another episode of Game Changers. Today, everyone, we are going to be talking with the boss who's making VR more commonplace. But, Dan, I'd love to get your take on this. I don't really know how tech savvy you are. I know you're on the gram, but that doesn't really count in the world.
I do love the gram, right?
You love you some IG.
I think I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah, no, you are really good at it. But virtual reality, are you ready for this to be a part of your everyday life and culture? I know our guest, his company is about creating VR for the post-smartphone world. Yeah. Are you ready?
I don't know if I'm ready. All I can think of is the Black Mirror episode where, the two best friends growing up were in this very salacious, strange relationship, and they were able to interact via VR. So I always think, will it be like that? Will it be very normal? Will it be strange, bizarre? You just never know. So I'm just going to wait for things to happen and then circle back.
Okay, Dan, let me just say, I was not ready for Dan to say that because we actually saw that episode together.
We did at the Netflix screening.
Yes, and I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, the reactions in the crowd were, something else.
That was so crazy. But you know what? When we bring on the founder of Drop, we can ask him,
we ask him what? Yeah, is that what you're building?
Or is it just more, everyday tasks? Is it going to make, checking your email easier? Is it going to, am I just going to be one of those people that are walking around with those big goggles on, pointing at the sky all crazy? I'm not sure, but I can be into it.
Yeah.
I'm not the most on top of everything tech, but I do like anything that's going to make my life more efficient and much easier. I know there's a company called Super Heroic, which is founded by this guy, Jason Maiden. Shout out to Jason Maiden. And he always talks about using Excel spreadsheets to hack his life. It actually sounds super complex. And I myself code, and I'm like, Jason,
those formulas are not for me.
You have time to set up VBA code for your personal life. And he does it all around his calendar. I wonder if VR can do something to that extent, not necessarily coding, but do things to hack my life to make it better and more efficient. If so, then I would say I'm definitely all in.
Yeah, it's very interesting because so many companies are pouring a lot of research dollars into it. Facebook with Oculus, and even Facebook recently purchasing a whole company that's actually going to allow you to control things in the world through your mind.
Yeah.
So it's kind of scary to think this is the future that we're very, very, very close to.
It'll be super duper interesting, and we have a lot more coming up with that.
Next up, the VR expert who's talking all things next level. So keep it locked here, right here on CultureBanx Game Changers. We know entrepreneurs are some of the busiest people around. They're hiring, they're building, they're doing it all. We've been reading a lot of cool things about your company. But tell us, who does it benefit more, the lender or the borrower?
Well, Solo is a marketplace, so it actually has to benefit both.
Rohan, Barley Sober. Yes. This is the company that is going to revolutionize the bar industry, not just here in the U.S., but globally. Tell us why. Now, there's nothing worse than having your business disorganized, but no need to fear. We are here to help.
First, though, let's get started with some entrepreneurial news that everybody should be aware of this week.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Game Changers. VR can possibly improve your daily life, and our next guest has an awesome company that's doing just that. Here to discuss more with us is Russ Ladson, the founder and CEO of Drop. Actually, I just called you Russell. I felt very formal. So it threw me off. I caught my own self off guard. I was like, Russell. Hey, Russ.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you for having me.
No, I'm glad that you flew from the Bay Area out here to see us for this show.
I know. It's always good to be in New York during the fall time.
Yeah.
So I was like, why not?
So don't shoot in the summer is what you're saying because you're not coming?
Yeah, I'm not dealing with MTA and the subway system.
Yeah, the heat is no joke. All right.
Definitely understand. All right, I know a ton about Drop, and I actually have been seeing a ton of press about you guys lately, Russ. But Drop, you've been building this company for 4 or 5 years at this point?
This is technically our 5th year. Legally speaking, Drop has been legally speaking, Drop has been incorporated for 5 years now.
Oh,
after you were working in your basement, right?
Yes, definitely early days. So no, the company started almost 5 years ago. It's funny when you say that. I'm like, oh my gosh, 5 years, because it seems It actually seems a lot longer, especially when you're like an entrepreneur. It seems because you've been working on it every single day. But it's been 5 years. We actually started the company here in New York. This was kind of like the genesis for Drop in a nutshell. Like I would walk down the street here in New York, and I would just look at people on their computing devices, just wondering like, okay, how are they going to interact with information when that iPhone is no longer in their pocket? Like what's actually next? And sort of like those, I guess, introspective questions that I was asking became Drop later down the line. So Drop today, we're based in San Francisco. If you don't know, so what Drop fundamentally does is, if I asked any of you to open your MacBooks right now, the first thing I would probably see is your Google Chrome, your Safari, or your Internet Explorer. And that's because the browser has always been the gateway to information discovery. And something I was fundamentally asking myself at Drop was, how will people kind of search, interact, and navigate the world when they no longer have an iPhone, but they have a VR, AR headset? And we quickly saw that the answer was the browser. So we built Drop. So Drop provides an immersive internet searching and browsing experience designed for your virtual reality and augmented reality headsets. Today is one of the most popular and top downloaded VR titles on one of the leading platforms, HTC Vive. We're available on HTC Vive, Oculus Rift, and Windows Mixed Reality.
Name drop it all.
I know, right? Everywhere. I mean,
Yes.
No, that's super cool. Yeah. You said the idea came to you. Did it come to you like on the 5 train or something? on your way?
Was that from Brooklyn?
Because the stuff I think about on the 5 train is clearly different than what you were thinking.
Yeah, I'm just trying to watch out for the guy who's dancing on the pole who may kick me in the face, right?
You know what? I will. In terms of like clarity, I think that, especially like with media, we always think that like entrepreneurs have like this aha moment, and I can fundamentally say I don't think that's true. And I say that because that's not necessarily true of Drop Story, and it's also not true of founders that I know who've gone on to fund companies. I think that most great companies really start with like this question that they're asking and trying to figure out. And then when you start bringing smart people around you, they start refining that question. It becomes very more specific. So that question went from, how will people sort of search and interact with information in the future to what does the nature of the internet look like, in 7 to 10 years when we all have VR, AR devices. So I think that New York, because you are in this sort of melting pot of people who are using frontier technology, but also just using their iPhones, we were able to see that, wait, there is something that's coming after the iPhone.
Interesting. So this isn't your first career, right? Like you started in investment banking, I believe.
Yes.
So how did you make a huge transition from IB to VR?
Yeah, so investment banking, after I finished college, that was 2011. So we're almost 10 years out. So that was a very long time ago when I think about it now. I started out in investment banking just because, my parents, they made it they were like, you're not going to go live in London after college and like pursue your artistic pursuits. Like, that's not
how the bank account's set up.
Yeah, that's not how the bank accounts are set up. You have a very prominent firm in New York City that's offering you a lot of money to go work for them. So you're going to go do it. And I did that for almost 3 years. And to be honest with you, I hated my life. Every day I loathed going into work. And don't get me wrong, like I always say that banks, they don't hire people who really enjoy finance. They hire just smart people to crunch numbers all day. And I knew where my interests were. They were in art, technology, and design. And in 2014, after being in a near-fatal car accident on a New Jersey Turnpike, I was like, you know what if I just take this risk? Like, what if, if I take this risk and the company doesn't work, what's the worst thing that's going to happen to me, right? I'm going to go back to a 6-figure type of lifestyle. And I took the risk and decided that we're going to see where it goes. So that next year, I started to get the company off the ground here in New York City, but that wasn't successful. Like I always say, like that was probably the first failure trying to start a company in New York City.
Right.
At least a company through the lens of like what we're doing at Drop. Like most of our technology, our software stack is 7-10 years down the line. New York is not a place for VR and AR. And I say that very confidently. I mean, there are some people who disagree. They're like, oh, like New York City is like Silicon Alley. And I'm like, not necessarily. Like there are pieces still missing here. So in 2015, decided to move the company out to San Francisco. And that's when things took off. So I moved the company out to San Francisco January 2016. Within 3 months, I met a very prominent VC who said, oh, you should go to Asia with the group of folks. And, it might be good to build your network and like meet folks. So while we were in Asia, we stopped in Taipei. And for those who don't know, HTC is headquartered in Taipei because it's a Taiwanese smartphone manufacturer. So I'm sitting at this table very similar to where we are today. And you have these accomplished entrepreneurs around me. They're like talking about the companies they've sold to Facebook and BlackBerry. And they're like, well, what are you working on? Mind you, I'm living in San Mateo, California.
Right.
There are like 3 of us. We have a really crappy prototype of this like browser for the future. And I'm like, well, we're looking at the future of like information discovery on our not on our smartphone devices, but in VR and AR. And everyone's at the table like, what the heck is this dude talking about? And at that point, I'll never forget Raymond Powell, who I believe he's still at HTC. He was the head of new technology at the time. I got back to the Bay about a month later. I got an email from him. And he said, hey, this is not publicly announced yet, but we have a $100 million AR VR fund, and we're backing early stage VR companies because we have a headset that's going to be released later this year. And I would like for you to meet our venture team in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I know a little thing about venture at that point. I'm like, but we're early. We're like prototype. I don't think that someone's going to invest this soon. So I go to HTC in a mission. That's where their VR AR business is headquartered. I walk in, and that's when I met with Mark Metis, who's actually still the global head of the Vive business. And he's like, okay, tell me what you're working on. So I show him the prototype, and he's like, this is interesting. He was like, the browser. He was like, I'm interested in no one's thinking about what the future of the browser will look like in VR and AR. And he was like, talking about the team and like, what's the future for the company? And he was like, well, let me kind of take this to the investment committee and see what they think. Working with corporates, right. You have a meeting in January, you may not hear from them for like a year or two. It takes forever. And at that point, about 3 months later, I get an email from his team, and they said, hey, we're interested in Drop. We're going to make this large investment into the company. And I literally dropped my phone when I was reading the email. I was like, this can't be like one of the world's largest smartphone manufacturers is investing in a company that you started. Like it just seemed too good to be true. So at that point, HTC came on board. That was August of 2016. And I spent the next year raising our institutional round. So HTC led our seed round. And then I went out and raised additional capital from Backstage Capital, Macro, which is led by Charles King, Matter Ventures, Autochrome Ventures. They're based in LA. And we have several prominent angel investors in New York, LA, and San Francisco.
It's impressive.
As well. Yeah.
Russ, you have a lot going on.
Yes.
We're going to have to continue this conversation on the other side because I really want to get into the specifics of the technology and how we can just start to try to incorporate it in our everyday life. So stick with us right here on CultureBanx Game Changers. More with Russ from Drop VR after this.
Joining us now is Rebecca Allen, CEO of Rebecca Allen Shoes. Thanks so much for having us and joining us with us.
Thanks for having me. Hi. All right, let's go back a little bit to just really tell our viewers what Squad is, how they can grow their squad, and what this really means for authentically connecting with others.
Way back during my time in the Obama administration, we talked about healthcare, particularly from the Obamacare and a lot of the rules and regulations.
What about, the ability to take those online connections offline at scale? And so that was what Squad essentially is and does.
So tell us how you've been leveraging the Obama network to help build your business. We're back with Russ Ladson, the CEO of Drop VR, talking all things next level with virtual reality. So Russ, tell us the specific, like the simplest way that you would describe your company as well as what's next for it.
Yes. So very simply put, for folks who aren't technically minded, Drop is the Google Chrome for virtual and augmented reality. It is your go-to browser when you are in VR and AR. So just a great example, most of our users spend about 20 to 25 hours a week in a headset. Okay. And for them, they need a place where they can sort of maintain their productivity, but also find out what's happening in the world. So they use our 3D spatial web browser in VR and AR to actually do such thing. So today, Drop is a browser for VR and AR. But my grand vision, are you a Black Panther fan?
Yeah,
okay.
I like it. Yeah.
Everyone has seen Black Panther.
It's only an iconic movie.
Black Panther.
The movie.
The movie, yes.
Okay.
So my vision for Drop has always been, I've been talking about the post-smartphone, the post-iPhone. My vision for Drop is to create the first piece of hardware that actually replaces the iPhone. And I think that it looks something like Kimoyo beads from Black Panthers.
Wow.
So I always say like the first stage of Drop was creating this browser. The second stage, or I always say our second act, is actually creating what I call like the I call it the Microsoft, becoming like the standard operating system needed for VR and AR. And then like our grand vision is to eventually get into hardware, which would be something that looks like Camillo Beats that people will use instead of their iPhones.
Wow.
Yes.
That's super interesting. All right, Russ. I talked earlier in the show about being able to use VR and AR in a way to just like hack your everyday life. You talk about it being like the Google Chrome sort of browser. Now, I know for myself and for the business, I Google everything. Do I have to put on the goggles? Because a girl has on lashes, and it becomes a situation.
They start falling off.
Yeah, like I can't be adding that.
So you brought up a really good point by saying you have to put on a goggles. So to use Drop, yes, you do need to put on a headset to actually use it. But you brought up another concern, which is the industrial design of the actual headset.
Right.
So most of these teams that are designing these high-end VR, AR headsets, they don't really have diverse teams. So oftentimes, like for example, I kind of have like a mini fro, and an issue I have is that it becomes a little tight.
Yes, I mean, right? And it's lopsided. Never mind.
Yes, but yes, you do need to use the head-mounted display to actually use Drop and many other VR, AR experiences.
But when you come out with the Black Panther,
it might just be right here.
Right.
But we're going to slowly get there. So right now, Facebook recently announced that they are working on augmented reality glasses. Mm-hmm. There are rumors that Apple is working on augmented reality glasses, which will probably look something very similar to like Google Glass. This idea that you'll walk down the street and you'll be able to look at someone and see their LinkedIn page next to them, for example.
That's incredible.
So we are going into that direct direction. I tell folks all the time that if you look at most major companies in the Valley right now, a majority of their product development is focused on VR and AR. But the way we need to think about VR and AR is the same way we need to think about mobile. When mobile first came, I mean, really, mobile was much earlier than the iPhone, right? And that's where we are with virtual and augmented reality. We're nowhere near the iPhone moment, as people would like to believe. We're very much still like the Palm Trio days, right? And we haven't even gotten to the BlackBerry and then eventually the iPhone. So right now, when we think about VR and AR in our everyday uses, I think that you'll probably first see it in the workplace. So you'll probably have like augmented reality collaboration. So if you and I were designing something, we'll be able to put on a Magic Leap headset and be able to move a Post-it around together, right? You'll start getting into things like virtual humans. So no longer will you have a Zoom conference, your virtual human will actually be there and look and talk like you. So I think we'll first see it in like the enterprise space, and then we'll probably continue to see it in like the science space what we're doing right now. Not we, but what the industry is seeing, and then eventually moving into consumer, like the iPhone, for example, in terms of smartphone penetration, probably in another 5 to 7 years at the earliest.
Well, I'm ready for you to get your vibranium on so that we can always have our beads and live our best lives.
Black magic everywhere.
Yes, exactly what we need. Russ, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here. And if you ever want to talk VR AR, you know where to find me.
Yes, we definitely do.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Russ Ladson from Drop VR. Stick around. We have some more entrepreneur news coming up next.
The other car has a slight piece of lint.
All right, everyone, you're back with us on CultureBanx Game Changers. We just talked to Russ Ladson. He dropped a lot of gems when it comes to virtual reality, but even more so, he talked about some great entrepreneurial keys. Dan, what did you really get?
Oh my gosh, the first thing I really took away from it was pursue your passion. Like, you only get to live life once, so just like make every moment count, right? So it was just really cool to hear his story.
Also, what am I going to be thinking about on the 3 train? Since he came up with his idea.
We are way behind, right?
I'm going to have to get out of my smooth piano playlist on Spotify and start doing some more deep thinking around virtual reality. But something else that was really interesting was the way that he went about sort of developing the funding behind his company, because he felt like he was too early stage to really raise capital, but that wasn't the case. And so I think it just goes to show that it doesn't matter where you're at. When you have a great idea, there is money out there, and people that are willing to invest in your product, and something that we should all take away from that.
For sure. And then next up, I really thought something that stood out was don't be afraid to move. Like, he left New York, went to San Francisco. He said one suitcase, just a few dollars in the bank account, something I just couldn't do. But like, that's clearly what kind of set him up for what he had next.
Yeah, no, definitely makes perfect sense. Well, everyone, thanks so much for joining us again on Game Changers. I'm Corey Hale, along with Dan Roberts. And make sure you check out all of the Game Changers and CultureBanx content at CultureBanx.com.
Be sure to catch the next episode of Game Changers on Roku, CultureBanx, or YouTube. Until next time, keep building for the culture.
It was done pretty good today. This is a really good show.